I'm Brian McCreath at Symphony Hall with Seong Jin Cho, the pianist who's back in Boston. After a few years, it turns out that you were here in 2020, just before everything got locked down for the pandemic. Seong Jin Cho, thank you so much for a little bit of your time today.
My pleasure. It's really great to be back.
You did Prokofiev here for your BSO debut in 2020. And I just, I wonder if you can reflect, if you look back at March 2020, how different a person are you now from at that point?
It was a totally different world back then. It was one of my last concerts before the pandemic. And I didn't expect something very big before the pandemic. When I was in Boston, because no one could expect what is going to happen. But I knew, or I felt that something is going to happen, but I didn't know what that is. So, yeah, I'm very grateful that I'm back here, and it is my third collaboration with Andris, so I'm really happy.
Yeah, and I think you speak for a lot of us when you say that you couldn't imagine what was about to come in March of 2020. But we're glad you're back now, and with Ravel, it's especially wonderful to hear you play Ravel with the Boston Symphony. Tell me about the piano concerto in G. You spent many years doing competitions, and that culminated with winning the Chopin competition. Were you able to take on something like the Ravel G major during those years? I don't know if it's a competition piece or not, but when did you take this concerto on as one of the pieces you wanted to add to your repertoire?
Actually, I'm very familiar with French music in general because I studied in Paris for 4 years, and this Ravel concerto in G, first time I played was in Seoul, and with Seoul Philharmonic when I was 15 years old in 2009 with Myung-Hoon Chung, Korean conductor. So, and I've been playing this concerto so many times since then, and it is just fun to play with the orchestra, and there's like continuous dialogue between the piano and the orchestra. And the second movement, it is so beautiful and lonely. So I can say this is one of my favorite concertos.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated that you were playing it when you were that young, and then you went to Paris to study. Did moving to Paris kind of give you an extra angle, extra perspective on this piece that you hadn't had before?
Well, maybe a long time ago, there was kind of like piano school existing, like Russian piano school or French piano school, but I don't think not anymore. Maybe there is, but like what I learned from Paris is not about the French piano school. It was about the French culture, so I feel like I just learned something unconsciously. So like French spirit kind of thing, I think I could observe very unconsciously when I was in Paris.
Right. That makes a lot of sense that you soak up the surroundings, and that kind of makes its way into everything that you do in music, I suppose. So tell me, when you learned of the opportunity to come to Boston to play this particular music, what went through your mind about playing Ravel with the Boston Symphony?
I know that Boston Symphony has a very great tradition about the French repertoire. And I just finished our first rehearsal, and I was so impressed by their playing. I think I've never experienced this kind of smooth rehearsal before. I'm sure they know the piece, and it is in their blood. I could feel that. So it was so easy to play with them and so enjoyable.
Listening to this very first rehearsal, I have to share with you my own impression, which is that there was like an electric bolt that went through you and the orchestra. There was so much energy on the stage. And so hearing you describe it as smooth and fluid, that goes along with this energy. Did you feel that kind of energy as well?
Oh yes. It was so fun.
Yeah. That's terrific. Tell me a little bit about your most recent recording that you've released, Handel. It's so different from Ravel. And of course, you recorded this months and months ago, but you were just here in Boston, what was it, 5 months ago, to play a recital that involved Handel and the Brahms Handel variations. Tell me how different it is to play the Handel suites that you recorded compared to this Ravel piano concerto?
It is totally different language. It's like it's explaining about the difference between German and French language. They're totally different. Perhaps Spanish and Italian, they're a little bit similar, but French and German, they're totally different. And yeah, I was interested in Baroque music, so I decided to record and play this Handel because not so many people play this music on modern piano these days. But I discovered this piece during the pandemic, and immediately I felt like, oh, I just want to play this piece.
It is an interesting choice because I would, sort of expect for a lot of people that when they go into Baroque music as a pianist, maybe they'll try Bach first. But you chose Handel, not that, I mean, it's great music as well. Tell me about whether that was even a factor in your decision to do Handel for this recording instead of Bach.
If I'm being honest, I felt like I was not ready to play Bach yet. I admire and respect Bach, and it is so different from Handel, even though they're both like German composers. But Handel's music is more melodic, and there's an emotional landscape. But while Bach is more intellectual and more complex. So for me, as a Baroque music beginner, Handel's music was more easy to follow and understand because I've been playing so much of romantic and classical repertoire and as well the 20th century music. And Baroque was so new to me, and Handel was quite easier to follow. And of course, I love to explore more of Bach in the future, but I just wanted to start with Handel.
What did you do with this recording in order to play Handel? How did you adjust your playing on the modern piano to play this music compared to those, as you say, these other romantic and classical pieces that you've been doing with orchestras and recitals?
Well, I did a lot of experiments when I prepare for this program, and then I decided not to use the pedal when I play this music, and because it is easier for me to make the sound that I want to produce, and the articulation and the phrasing is so different from the romantic repertoire. So it was very demanding, and it was a big journey for me.
Yeah, I imagine that when you are playing the way that you always have, using the pedal to get certain effects, to sustain notes in ways that suddenly if you decide you're not going to, there's a whole new set of questions that comes up for almost everything you're doing in these pieces by Handel.
Right. But for me, when I used the pedal, when I played the Baroque music, it became even more difficult because I just wanted to produce the sound which is a little bit more clear, and I just wanted to hear all the voices. All the voices were very important, and I just wanted to show and play them as clear as possible.
Last summer, you came to Tanglewood for the very first time, and we're very delighted that you'll be there again this summer. Tell me what your impression was of Tanglewood and the Kusevitsky Music Shed playing in that space when you did Brahms last summer.
It was a great experience, great time. So beautiful landscape, fresh air. Just one problem. One issue was I played in the afternoon and it was so hot.
It was a hot summer, yes.
And I had to play Brahms' second concerto, which is not like a piece of cake.
That's true. Nobody thinks of the Brahms second as a walk in the park, so to speak. But yes, tell me about your choice of Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 9 to perform this summer with Susanna Melki. What is it about that piece that made you want to bring it to Tanglewood?
I'll be playing this concerto somewhere in Salzburg and also in Korea. and I'm learning it now, and I'm always astonished by this piece because Mozart was even younger than me, much younger than me, and he was able to compose this kind of great art. Especially for me, everyone says like the second movement is genius, but for me the last movement is genius. Of course, second movement is so beautiful and it's so like how can I say, it's so deep, but the last movement in the middle part, um, it is kind of like saying goodbye or some kind of thing. It is in major key, but it's so sad. I don't know how he composed it like this way, but maybe that's why he's a genius.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that perception of the piece. That's really wonderful. Seong Jin Cho, it's really, really nice to talk with you. Nice to meet you. Lovely to hear you here in Symphony Hall playing Ravel with the BSO. So thank you for a little bit of your time today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'm Brian McCreath at Symphony Hall with Seong Jin Cho, who's back with the Boston Symphony for the other of Ravel's piano concertos. You played the piano concerto in G last year, Seong Jin, and thank you for a little bit of your time today to talk about the piano concerto for the left hand.
My pleasure.
This is such an unusual piano concerto in the way that it's constructed, in the role of the piano and the orchestra, the way that they trade ideas back and forth, even in what, of course, you have to do as it's a left-hand only concerto. So I'd like to ask, first of all, as such an unusual piece, is it one that you learned early on, or has it been a more recent addition to your repertoire?
Actually, it's a recent addition to my repertoire, and I played this piece for the first time last September in Toronto, and I think I played 5 times with the orchestra, so this is going to be my 6th time to play with the orchestra.
I wonder then how you prepared musically. We'll talk about physically in a little bit, but musically, what did you do to prepare in learning the piano concerto for the left hand, especially as it's such a different piece from the other Ravel piano concerto that you played here last year?
I've been always loving this concerto since many years, and I always wanted to include this concerto in my repertoire, and I'm really glad that I'm finally be able to play this piece. And this piece is very different from the G major concerto, and I feel like this piece is more jazzy and has lots of character in the middle section. It sounds like military march a little bit because Ravel composed this piece for Paul Wittgenstein, who lost his right arm during the war, and I feel like in this piece you can hear some tragedy and also like a military march, but you know there's some kind of spirit in the piece, and I'm always imagining about the war and tragedy and like sometimes also very depressing.
Yes, but at the same time, I have to say, listening to you perform this in rehearsal, your way of playing in general is so beautiful and so fluid. It's a really interesting thing to think of such a dark piece, but also your own way of playing that's so beautiful. Do you tailor your playing in particular ways? Do you play differently in this concerto than you would in for instance, the G major concerto?
Yeah, every time I play the different music, I always try to play differently and try to be a different person as well, different musician or whatever. So this concerto has 2 cadenzas, which is really beautiful and also tragic, as I said before. And of course, the orchestra accompanied, and Andris accompanied me so wonderfully. So I was very happy.
Well, as I said, it's such an unusual piece, and the most obvious unusual thing is that your right hand doesn't do anything during the entire piece. And so I wonder how you train yourself. Are there particular exercises, etudes, other pieces you play to get used to the idea of only playing with your left hand and figuring out even what to do with your right hand while you're playing?
Even though technically it's so demanding and I've never played a piece only for the left hand before, I think the music itself is so beautiful and wonderful. So when I play this piece, I stop thinking about that I'm playing only my left hand. But of course, it's so difficult, especially the cadenzas. They're so difficult and it's so tempting because I want to use my right hand also.
That's another question that I wondered with all the left-hand repertoire, how tempting is it to just throw your right hand for a note here or there? It must be kind of funny to think that way.
Yeah, I shouldn't.
Well, tell me this. Another unusual thing to me as I listen to the concerto, compared to something along the lines of Beethoven, Schumann, even Chopin, there's so much more piano and orchestra together in this concerto that you have to be 100% locked in with Andris and his way of doing this piece. Was it at all hard to come together on the way that you would do this together with you and Andris?
So right before the rehearsal, Andris and I had a very nice meeting, and we shared our ideas about this piece, and he and I agreed that there's nice conversation between the orchestra and the piano, and we share the same spirit and the character. And also, I have to say that whenever I perform this piece, it's so fun to play, and because the orchestration is fantastic, first of all, and of course the piano part is also fantastic. So I feel like I'm also becoming not only the pianist, but part of the orchestra member when I play this piece.
Yeah, it's like being part of the orchestra, maybe more so than some other concertos, I suppose. Now, you studied with a teacher in Korea named Seong Jin, who herself studied with Leon Fleischer, someone very well known for this piece of music because he exclusively performed left-hand only music for so long. Is there anything that you would point to from your studies with her about music, about the way that Leon Fleischer thought of music that maybe helps you with your approach to the Ravel?
I think my teacher, Seong Jin, was hugely influenced by Leon Fleischer, and I could feel that. And not only for Ravel, but in general, I learned so much of phrasing. And she told me many stories about the Leon Fleischer, and his making of phrasing is so special. And I think I learned a lot from her.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's been many years now since you won the International Chopin competition. Enough years, and with a pandemic in between, that it must seem like a very long time ago for you. And I guess I read somewhere that you needed to stop playing Chopin for a period of time. What is your relationship now with music by Chopin? Is it a composer to whom you actually play a lot now, or are you still a little bit keeping some distance from Chopin's music?
Of course, as a winner of the Chopin competition, I had to play a lot of Chopin right after the competition, but I really didn't want to be labeled as a Chopin specialist because I wanted to play different repertoire as well, like Brahms, Mozart, Beethoven. As a pianist, we are so fortunate to have so much repertoire. But now I feel like I don't care anymore, and I don't care what people say or anyway. So I think being a Chopin specialist is also a very special thing, and I'll be honored if someone call me he's a Chopin specialist, but I don't consider myself as a Chopin specialist. But of course, Chopin is one of my favorite composers, and I still play. Before coming to Boston, I was in Amsterdam, and I played Chopin Concerto in E minor with the Concerto Orchestra. So yes, I'm playing Chopin's music, not solo music, but concerto quite often, and I'm planning to play more Chopin's solo music in the future.
Wonderful. Well, we here in Boston think of you as someone with a huge range because we've heard you play Prokofiev, Brahms, Mozart, and now Ravel. So there's a lot to choose from, and we're always interested to hear what you're going to do here in Boston. So Seong Jin Cho, thank you so much. It's really good to hear you again. It's really wonderful to have you back in Symphony Hall. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.